Not a computer.
Okay.
All right, folks. So we'll get started with the planning board meeting. And the first order of business is to approve the minutes of the 5/27 meeting that David just put out today.
I move we approve the minutes as amended. I gave David a correction.
What, did he only end the meeting?
I didn't give him that when I saw it, but I didn't give it, I gave him hug on there, not bug on there.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So, I'll second, yes, second, okay. So, the minutes are approved. Second. And now we will move on to the Baldwin 6 solar project. And here we go. Got some new maps here, the new site plan.
Thank you.
I also have the old one if you guys don't have your copy from last time for comparison.
You don't need the other.
Well, just to see what changed.
Oh, okay.
And so, really what we're doing is we're providing you with an update on the plan design, based on feedback from the last meeting, with the help of Baldwin and some other research to verify that, as much as possible. There's still some ambiguity on the history of the road, but there's no point in really kind of debating it a whole lot further. We considered whether or not there was a more convenient way to reroute the road, but we decided that it was the easiest solution was quite frankly to work around it. And so one of the things you'll see on the design is obviously the road in place and the panels working around that road, and we included the 75-foot required setback from the center of the road, just so that everything was in line with the ordinance. It did cause us to just shift around the panels a little bit. A couple of other things that you'll notice if you compare the two areas, to create a little bit of flexibility and also to reduce some of the shading. Because we're grouping some of the panels a little bit further down the hill. The limit of disturbance or the tree clearing area is a little bit wider in some areas. But again, we're not encroaching on any natural resources of concern, wetlands, grasslands, or anything like that. The access road, we did decide to go ahead and extend that all the way up so that in construction and access for the northernmost portion of the panels, it was easier to access. And so that road will be crossing the Town Farm Road. It will be designed in a way that doesn't have any impact on the Town Farm Road as well. A couple of other key things to point out. I think that's really the majority of it. The only other thing worth pointing out is if you look towards the bottom of the, and I'm going to point this up, right in this area here along Route 113, it's labeled as a meadow buffer. It should be properly, if it was properly termed, that would be a vegetated buffer. And so it would still be a forested area, kept as a vegetated buffer, but qualified with the stormwater requirements as a stormwater buffer. And we're maintaining a 100-foot setback from Route 113, from the side of the road on Route 113. And so there'll be screening alongside the road, visibility of the panels most parts of the year, recommended. And that's it in a nutshell. Did I cover anything?
I think you answered one of David's questions, and that was, what is the land, what's the area, and you have, and the light blue line illustrates the project proposed limit of disturbance, LOD, and the approximate limit of the proposed project lease, plus or minus 43 acres. So to zero in on for the CUP.
Right.
And for comparison, the previous one we showed you, that we presented last meeting, was 40 acres. So that's that additional clearing for shading. And, that's pretty much it.
One other point to just kind of reference, DEP stormwater, that we provide enough buffers for 75% of the stormwater runoff, and this design actually has 90%, so that we're exceeding that requirement.
It looks like you split the, construction staging area into two parts.
Correct.
Here.
And those will be temporary, and preceded, after we're done doing construction. If there's been any compaction of ground, that'll be loosened, reseeded, and then allow us to return to natural vegetation.
Are you gonna use the, Beacon Road from Pawtucket Trail to the Town Farm Road, or the Town Farm Road for construction purposes?
No. So where you see the entrance coming off of Beacon Road, very close to the junction of Route 113, that will be the only traffic that's used by the project on Beacon Road, that very small area, and then accessing and going directly into the project, and all of the other activity will be accessed from that point going forward and further up the hill.
And then there's the access road does have to cross Town Farm Road to get to that northern overlay area. But it's just a crossing, not to be used Town Farm.
Matt, I'm not seeing the acreage, oh, thank you.
You're gonna have lines coming across Town Farm Road to connect the two, or are you going underground?
Correct, but they'll be underground.
You're going underground? No, it's good.
Are you gonna talk to the, town road commissioner about that entryway from?
Correct.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
on
we
the
will.
list, that's on the list from the last meeting, yeah.
Yeah.
And we expect that we'll do reinforcement of there prior to construction to make sure that's appropriate for the weight of construction equipment, and then also when we repair there afterwards, so that it's better than original state after the construction.
I wrote to Brian today, sent an email, and I sent him a copy of this, and asked him for his, professional assessment of the plan in terms of the impact and suitability of, entering into Deacon Road and things like that there, so he can weigh in on that for us.
Yeah, feel free to look us in to that email.
And Matt,
Just to work with us directly.
as a further response, I think you were the one who asked the question the last time about whether or not we would consider using where our power line is coming out of the project as an access.
Is that the driveway that's there?
It's actually further up the road from the driveway, and that's based on the power line pole that we're connecting to. And one of the reasons we're not suggesting that is, first, there is a matter of convenience using an existing road and not having to create another curb cut and everything associated with that. But the other reason too is that would require us to do a wider clearing of the trees down through that area and creating the apron. So, you know, we'd have to remove more trees, more timber removal, greater environmental impact, as well as a greater visibility impact to the project.
Have you actually seen the curb cut that's already there?
Yeah.
It's, as wide or wider than Deacon Road.
But again, that's not this curb cut.
So then you would have that curve cut and have the clearing for the power line.
How wide is that, interconnection, clear cut and interconnection?
Good question. I would have to, I couldn't tell you right now.
Okay.
There are standard, like, safety widths.
At some point, I'd love to know,
Good question.
just for my own,
Yeah.
one of the things that comes up as we become Saudi Arabia of solar, even Baldwin, you know, is the visual impact of it. And so I just want to have other ideas I don't know. You probably are not the last ones in here.
Yeah.
For solar farm. And, yeah, because people are, you know, unfortunately, Maya Pit was the first to be constructed here in town. And we talked with them about vegetative buffer, and we weren't smart enough to understand it was an interconnection, and should have talked about it. They just, you know, did it. And that's our fault. So I don't want to have it be our fault too many times. So just, that's my question.
So part of the site law application is there's this kind of visual analysis that goes along with that. I'm actually just working on that section today, so it's fresh in my mind. But we sort of do this survey area for this project within a 2-mile radius. We've done LiDAR, tree cover, sort of all do this sort of analysis, and the map kind of pops out places where the project will be visible, like up high on a ridge, there's clear trees, that kind of thing. So that'll be something that you'll be able to review on the site application.
See, they're the ones who are going to do the site evaluation. You know, the citizens of the town are going to tell us what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. And as I say, you're catching it from me because of what happened in the
Totally.
yeah, that's good to me. Go in.
What are the next steps?
Well, that's some things I want to talk about. So, when I asked about the existing driveway and staging area that's there, the answer that you gave me last week, I said, why aren't you using that? And your answer was safety. Okay. So, before I get into this, let me state that my objective in discussing this Deacon Road versus that area is twofold, and twofold only. One is the safety of the citizens of Baldwin, considering the impact of the traffic and congestion that could occur with all the construction equipment going in and out of Deacon Road on 113 versus if it were to go in and out of the existing staging area. So it's safety on one hand, and on the other hand, it's what I asked Brian about, and that is the adequacy and the impact on a town road, and what's going on there. So those are the objectives of this discussion. 3 times. I put my foot on the gas, and no sooner had I put my foot on the gas than I had to jam on the brakes because some little Honda came zooming up over the hill, going east to west, and I had to stop. There have been times when my car is partway out of the road and something's coming so fast that I stop and try to pull back. What's even worse is when I'm in my truck, hauling my, 28-foot Winnebago, and I'm trying to pull out in either direction on the 113, because Deacon Road is not a three-rod road. It is not a typical town road. It is a dirt road that was made basically 1 car width wide. You cannot fit an 18-wheeler and a passenger vehicle side by side on that road. And when something long and big pulls out, particularly something that's like a semi-hauling equipment, you have to take big swings into the other lane. There is no way that you can just pull out tight without cutting off the corners. I've had the stop sign replaced more than once on there because it's been crushed. Now, so I'm concerned about visibility and width. And it's not just for me. We have the mail lady that comes in and out every day. We have delivery people that come in and out all the time. There are a number of folks in town who own land up Town Farm or down Beacon. And they come in and they access us down the 2-track. We have hikers and we have hunters. This is a very popular hunting area. I'll come up during deer season and there'll be half a dozen cars parked all around the circle where my mailbox is. So it isn't just that I live on Beacon Road, we're the ones that go in and out. And all it takes is one accident for somebody involved in to get hurt. And they don't even have to be turning into Beacon Road. It could be because a truck is coming in or out and somebody's going too fast. And they don't go 55 miles an hour. Okay? They're going 60, 65, 70. We've had people in here and in the selectmen's meeting complaining about, further up in West Baldwin by the mailbox where it's 45. People are zooming by. So, I would feel better if we did a line of sight analysis and compared the entrance on Beacon Road versus the entrance to the existing,
Like a lay down there or something.
what's that?
It's like a lay down there, right, for timber.
Yeah.
And I was just looking, I'm not entirely sure, it's not on our current plan. I do know, and I checked as I was going up, that does not correspond with where we're bringing our power line on.
No, I don't know that. I don't know that.
Our power line is, and I can't say it specifically in between, but it's somewhat in between that existing curb cut and further up. Now, whether or not that existing curb cut could give us access, does it show on this at all?
Well, there's another advantage to that existing curb cut. And let me
It's actually a curb cut, like into the driveway, into the.
Yes. So, let me say this, to be very clear, if the DEP or the independent, highway traffic people that do the, line of sight analysis come back and say Beacon Road is better than this existing staging area, which it may be, because that existing
reaction to putting you got a little bit of a hill and you've got the down-sloping curve.
Neither one is ideal, but let's get a professional, independent opinion of which one is best and safest for the people involved with it. And then that's the one we can work with. Let me say one thing. Bob brought up a very interesting point. We bent over backwards for Jamie McDonald to allow him to subdivide his land. Because the house that was built right across from where we are now was supposed to be built a telephone pole or two up. They built the whole thing on his land. He had to subdivide it in order to do the deal with you guys and everything.
Now, just to clarify the historical record on that, we already had a lease, and I don't know exactly how the individual who built the house made the error, but the error was then brought to our attention. And basically we said to all parties, that requires subdivision to honor the lease. And so we cooperated with them to accomplish that. But our lease was already in place, so it wasn't done, the subdivision was not done for the solar project. It was done to accommodate this error that was made.
Exactly. It was so Jamie could have different parcels. And so, because he had to subdivide to sell off that parcel and value them. Now, there's a rule that you cannot put a driveway onto a state road from a subdivision. Is that David?
Yeah, and so about to say, but they can't not use Beacon Road.
No. There's a grandfather clause that we allow Jamie to use to approve the subdivision so that the driveway that goes into that house wasn't a violation of the subdivision ordinance. And the driveway, the curb cut, is already there for the logging staging area. Been there for a long time, and could get that same grandfathering treatment if that staging area is the ideal, safest situation for your staging area. If it's not, if they say that Beacon Road is safest, then we should work with Beacon Road. But we have to make sure that it is wide enough and has enough brush and other things cleared away that we maximize the line of sight for the safety of all people using that intersection.
And to that point, it's very typical when we're receiving conditional use permit that it includes the appropriate preparation of widening, clearing, making sure that the entrance is safe. So we wouldn't be surprised if the planning board were to enter that as one of the conditions. One of my concerns, maybe, and there might be a way that we can work around this, on your suggestion that there be a review of the two alternatives, is how that applies to the timeline here. And I don't know if it's possible, and we can talk to our engineering staff about this. I don't know if it's possible for us to make a tweak to this drawing and come back to the final hearing with that tweak that shows both access points, perhaps with a note that says both points would be studied, and the conditional use permit would then allow for the review to then choose which one of those points. I don't know if that's reasonable, but I'm kind of in my mind, I'm trying to identify a way that we don't have to put everything on
on hold for 6 weeks to 2.5 months while we go through this review, simply to identify what the access point is.
You're beyond my knowledge on how long it takes to get things done. I wouldn't see you doing a whole other drawing or anything like that. I think that the decision tree is do the line of sight, you get a safety reading, that's gotta be able to happen pretty quickly.
Well, you had mentioned going to the DOT and DEP, and I didn't know if those were requirements in her.
Well,
Or even simply how we're engineering.
Back notice?
Yeah, go ahead, David.
So I'm not sure if everybody on the board totally in parallel with that. My default is that Beacon would be the best access because I don't like to create other access. So I hear his concern about the safety of Beacon, and I like him want to understand how you're going to co-use with the other folks who use Beacon and put in sufficient work to make sure that that's a safe alternative. But unlike that, I think it's your choice where you access the property. It just may be that we are going to need you to do other safety precautions like having flashing red lights that trucks are entering during the construction phase. But, I only differ in that in the sense of, I think it's your choice. You get to choose your access, as long as they're both safe. But understand, we have these concerns, and, we probably will want some sort of traffic study to make sure that if it's not safe automatically, that we can make it safe. Or you can make it safe. We can make sure it's safe. So, I agree with 80% of what Matt said. It's just that, I think it's ultimately your choice. Is that fair, Matt?
Well, I think we don't see it the same.
Yeah.
Because, the staging area that's there is cleared. It handles heavy logging equipment. It's wide. It's connected to logging trails that already go through this area. My impression is that it would be less work and less expense for you to leverage that existing staging area than to build 2 new staging areas here like this, because you are going to have to, whether it's off Beacon Road or whether it's off 113, you are creating a new.
They get to choose that. That's not up to the board to choose.
Well, my point, David, is that I believe that it should be based on what is safest for the people involved in it. I am not opposed to it being Beacon Road. I really am not, because it may actually benefit me. My daughter bottomed out her car on the damn rocks going in and out of Beacon Road. I'm calling Brian 3 times a year. Could you please put some gravel on Beacon Road? And we get ruts and gullies as soon as you go off the asphalt onto it and everything. My life pulling in and out there will be easier with the upgrades you're going to do to it. So don't think I'm opposed to it. I'm hung up on the safety issue because of what I have experienced there over 8 years of pulling in and out. It can be scary. My wife and I have a code system. I pulled out perfectly perpendicular, so we had as much sight line as possible. And she either said yes or no, very clearly, because more times than not, we start to pull out and something comes zooming by. It just, to me, doesn't make for a good situation. So, you know what? In my view, when we did Nature's Wilderness, and there was road evaluation of Senator Black Road, it was done by a certified traffic engineer. It wasn't done by DEP or the DOT. That's all I think we should do for the people of Baldwin.
You didn't say misunderstood your suggestion earlier.
Yeah.
I think McDonald's,
I went through the subdivision ordinance, it's very clear. I thought it was required. For site distances, perpendicular access to the roads. And I think you should do it, because, to me, I'm just reading quickly. Site distances are 550 feet.
Based on speed limit.
Based on 55, which is.
but that's if they come out on 113. If they come out on Beacon, that doesn't apply because they're coming out.
It still does, because Deacon is still going to be, their final.
But Deacon is an existing road.
Yeah.
It's an existing road, though, so I don't.
That's this is a safety issue. And it's clearly in the ordinance right now, what the site is getting down to, what you're saying. And whether you, if you'd like to just sign the plan, it's not necessary.
If we were to request a new entrance onto 113, we meet those requirements. If we're using an existing entrance onto 113, that existing entrance, it may or may not, but it's an existing entrance, it's an existing road.
You have to provide.
And so I understand the safety concerns here, and so it seems like maybe it's really an operational issue and or cooperation and coordination with the town highway supervisor.
If the existing logging staging area would turn out to be safer in terms of a line of sight analysis for the people involved, we want to do what's right for the people involved. If it turns out that Beacon Road is, we will do what is needed to make Beacon Road as safe as possible.
If that logging entrance is not a documented, permitted curb cut, and it does not meet the requirements that were pointed out, then we really have no choice, we wouldn't be allowed to use that, even if, through a comparison, it appears safer than Beacon Road.
I agree.
But there's other requirements as far as separation between access to that meet that requirement.
Again, so if it's not an existing road, we want to meet the additional requirements.
Well, you can't get
We overrode everything to approve that driveway for that house on the Beacon Road. I don't think anybody can tell me that we couldn't approve a driveway into a solar farm, in the same manner. I think it was.
But now you're forcing that on the applicant, like you're getting ahead of this. As far as I'm concerned, and I mean, there's 5 of us on the 6 of us on the board, so we all speak our own opinions. But I think we're getting ahead of the discussion. I think you're totally right on the first part of the discussion. Let's make sure that, and if you want to do both sites, that probably makes sense because the board can ask the question. So if you catch the person out there, you might as well do both. Make sure the site, figure out what the site distances are, figure out from a traffic engineer, what your traffic flow is, and bring us the data and the traffic person saying, this is safe or it's not safe, and it does meet the basic sightlines or it doesn't. And then the question is, what are you going to do about it? are you going to add safety features? Because like with Nature's Wilderness, I was vehement that we needed some sort of protection at the bottom of Senator Black Road, so when people pulled out, but the board said, no, we don't need any additional protection. This may be the case we do. There's all kinds of stuff we can do. You can have lights, you can have a system where if a truck pulls out, lights go up. You can even require them to have somebody, standing at the top of the hill with a sign during construction.
We are in agreement. We have to evaluate the two sites and go with the one that the consensus of the board and the applicant and the traffic engineer is going to be best for the people involved. That's the focus.
I agree. It's just how we get there. I just don't want you to say they have to have one or the other because that's getting ahead of the board. Because whatever states are, there's a lot of things they can do to make one as safe as the other. I guess that was my concern.
Are we sure that staging area road cut actually falls in this area?
No, I'm not sure exactly where it is, location. That's one of the questions.
It's like you down the road.
It's a full process.
Lots of that, so to speak.
Just be careful, because that's how this problem started. That guy took the poll number off and put it out there next to the poll number.
The way bulldozer works nowadays, it doesn't matter if the land is cleared or not. It's just as expensive or inexpensive to put it wherever you want.
Yeah, I guess my concern is if it's not already like a legitimate curb cut, then that's a whole other process that the project has to go through to apply and get a curb cut.
Understand.
Out here, curb cuts are with quotations, because it's up there.
Right, curb
Still,
cut.
the DOT permit.
Yeah. And then the second concern is if it is safer, but it doesn't necessarily meet the ordinance in terms of line of sight. And there can be improvements, like you were saying, to Beacon Road to make it similar.
If it doesn't meet if the logging area is not currently permitted and it's just a makeshift and it's never been permitted with DOT, then in order for us to use that as an entrance, we would actually have to apply for a variance from the town.
Well, why don't we get the inside? Because we're just kind of talking with this.
Yeah.
But I think, I think we're all in agreement. We want it to be safe. We most definitely don't want to cause an accident here. And so let us look at whether or not this is an operational issue or the creation of, or utilizing an alternative entrance. We'll look at that and we'll bring that forward with solutions to the public here.
And what's your construction period? How long are you going to be in construction?
The entire construction period is 54 to 6 months.
Right, so you can do a lot of things before the 6 months to be protected.
Yes.
And not to make a decision that you don't want to make now, but I'm visualizing and projecting if the traffic engineer comes back and says, 6 to 1.5 dozen of the other,
We still need the lighter flag.
the line of sight between the two, both of them have problems. Then it's really, you kind of coming to us and saying, which site can we work with the best to make the safest? With the things David was talking about, flashing lights or widening the road or doing this or doing that. It's all focused on that safety issue. So, wanted to ask you about the proposed construction staging area that was moved, because on this one, it's kind of way beyond the tree line. you know, and there's only the road and a little bit of clearance on either side of it. You know, and there's a lot of trees in there and a lot of buffer, okay? Not to mention the electric lines that power my house, going through there. But on this one, the staging area overlays the tree line and appears to go all the way up to the road for quite a distance. And even if you revegetate that, you know, you can't grow the trees that will be cut down to do that. So basically, that's going to create a very wide, 100% view from Beacon Road and even from the Quacket Trail into the power array until, you know, 10 or 15 years from now when those trees grow back up.
Where are you talking about this one down here?
Yeah.
So there's a 100-foot setback right here, right?
Well, I'm just, you know, look at this one, okay? You have the road coming in, and here's the tree line, okay? And it goes through there. This shaded area is the staging area. It goes beyond this dotted line. This little thing here, that's the tree line. This goes right up to the freaking road.
Right.
Okay, and that is clearing a lot of vegetation and brush that you can't replant. You can't replant what they're going to clear here, all those trees. You know, you might get some brush,
Right.
but
But it's not, from 107, you're not going to see that because you have this barrier here. This is still barrier.
Yep. Yeah, from here, you'll see in there just like that.
Right.
Just like that, particularly if we have to widen the road at all, you're gonna have a view just like you have at Miami. So that concerns me. I, for one, was shocked and appalled at the Sunrays operation in the Mayetta pit on 113. When I drove by for the first time, I nearly drove off the damn road because it's not just seeing the solar panels. The solar panels come all the way out to like within 50 yards of the road. And there is no buffer whatsoever. And before they built that road snaked in there through the trees to a huge wide open area. Now, I wasn't at the meeting where that was approved, you know, so I can't really say anything about it. But however that situation evolved, it shouldn't have. You know, my feeling is that we should, you know, do something to make them, you know, plant more buffer and things like that, because Joe was explaining that it was our mistake. And I think to quote his words, we don't want to make that mistake again.
I disagree. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe I'm not a step to that. I've been working a lot for that. But the CUP for that project expressly says that there will be a visual vegetative buffer between the road and the project.
And there isn't one.
So that's not the board's issue. That's a compliance issue with the town. So if they cut that and they didn't get penalized, that's not the board's issue. If they didn't replant it, that's not the board's issue. It says very clearly there will be a visual vegetative buffer. And so
we're not at odds, David. We're not at odds. I agree with you 100%. I just don't want to approve a plan that calls for no vegetative buffer, where the staging area would be if it goes off Beacon Road.
Just so we don't get long-winded about that, since it's being done, they talked to me back in February, and I approved some growth in cedar, and sand, and they get hemlock in there, and some flowering bushes that growth from green leaf all into all. There's gonna be a screen there.
So I can't speak to the other project, and it really doesn't. But we have, included in our design, leaving the buffer that you see along Route 117. I'm sorry, 113. And so along there will be a full buffer. There's a limit to what we can do as somebody drives past the driveway, and we'll have a glimpse of a solar power project while driving past a 50 or 75 foot wide driveway. And that's very limited.
Well, I mean, now, are you thinking you want to see it burn in the reconstruction, so
I don't know what I want to see. So the point that I'm making is that in the first plan, it was a very limited clearing of the existing vegetative cover, and I mean sizable trees and brush and everything like that. It was just wide enough to put the driveway in. And then the rest of the staging area is behind that vegetative buffer. In order to not overlay Town Farm Road, the array was shifted south and west so that it moved into the area of the prior staging area. That staging area had to be split into two to have enough room, and now the staging area runs, well past about 5 to 6 times the width of the driveway, and right up to the edge of the road. It overlays the tree line.
David, unlike his earlier comments, made a very wise comment. And a berm would solve a lot of that. When you stop, when you're through the staging area, before the bulldozers leave or the excavator, it just, builds a certain wall. How high are your solar?
11.
11 feet at the highest apex, when we're tilted, but that creates stormwater concerns and other issues.
Oh, okay.
We'll take a look at that.
Yeah.
And look to see if there's a way that we can either reduce or remove part of that staging area and reestablish.
So
Maybe
or another alternative.
Yeah, it might not be a whole, the whole length of the road being earned, maybe a short distance.
Yeah, you don't need 10 feet. I mean, all you need is 3 or 4 feet. Put some quick growing bushes on top of it, and you have a 10-foot vegetative buffer in the first year. So I think that's Matt's problem. When you cut this, it's going to take 20 years to build that buffer back up to the density it is today. So there's some way to speed that process up to get that vegetative barrier quicker. So, and we've used berms in the past, and they've been really effective. Just because when you're in a car, your sight line, it doesn't take much to knock that sight line out.
Okay.
Tracy, Dawn, anything?
I think we've raised some good issues, safety and buffers. It seems like, they're trying to keep the same number of solar cells into maybe they sacrifice some solar cells to make a big one.
I would be able to work with what we're raising here, so I'm pretty confident there in addressing this concern.
So let's summarize next steps on the project, just so we are all on the same page moving forward. Okay. We're gonna do, or have done, a line of sight analysis for the safety of the two entrances, us having DOT or DEP or anything, it's a traffic engineer.
Understood, I'm still a little bit hesitant on that issue, not knowing the status of that other, whether or not that's viable. We don't know the location of it, we don't know how it aligns with the project.
I think we should ignore the talk of it being where the woodyard was, because bulldozers today, I mean, you know, that's talk from back when we used horses to move forward. Bulldozers today can do an area bigger than the yard that's there in a day's work. I don't think there's an official curb cut. I think that you would have to create a curb cut, get a permit and everything else. But just, figure out with the land that you've got, the frontage you've got, is there anything in the frontage that you have established on your plan that, we could put an entrance that would be safer? I'm wondering if that would compromise the work, because I don't even think that landing is on your map.
I'm uncertain, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, it's not on this map, I don't know if it's.
I don't think it's even on your frontage.
Right.
I think, and Matt, the other thing I just kind of thought of too, maybe y'all already thought of it, but we're really talking about two different types of entrances. One is the entrance to the property and the project once it's built, and then the second one, and I think the bigger concern that we're focusing on is the construction entrance. And, I would ask the applicant to look at the possibility of doing a temporary construction entrance if there's a safer place along the road. And I don't know the impact of that, may not be, maybe a non-starter, but I think a lot of what Matt was talking about in terms of concerns dealt with the construction, not the day-to-day, 10, 5, 6 years from now, monitoring the property. So if that gives you any more leeway, maybe think about that.
Well, so,
If there's no.
I'm hearing some conflicting concerns. One of those concerns is visibility of the project. And so if we're concerned about the visibility of the project going past Deacon Road and looking up Deacon Road and seeing a small portion of the project, and now it's being suggested to us that we also go further down Route 113 and create a 50 to 75 foot opening that will have absolutely nothing but a clear shot looking into the solar panels. We're defeating one of those concerns. We're not defeating one of those concerns. We're amplifying one.
And I'll defer to Matt because he seems to have the more.
It's easy. Safety is the number one concern.
So if we could come up with a operational procedure that was extraordinarily safe at Deacon Road, would you find that acceptable?
Eventually, yeah, but I still want to, I have reservations about the inherent safety of the Deacon Road entrance because of the line of sight. And I'd be willing to trade off some visibility issues for the safety of people involved. It's real simple, it's not complicated. Safety is number one. Where's the safest place to go in now? Let's figure it out. If it's not Beacon Road, then we will work with you until the cows come home to, do things, help you get the curb cut, whatever is needed to be done. And then we'll tackle the visibility issue, okay? If it is Beacon Road that is, safest, then that is what we would do. And we'll make that, we'll do whatever we have to do to make that safest. And then we'll deal, again, secondarily, with any visibility issues. Does that help? Does that, those are the priorities.
We've noticed some additional comments, so I just want
The problem is, Matt, is there's nothing inherently safe or dangerous about an entrance. It's how they handle that entrance. I mean, they could literally, and I'm being serious, they could literally during construction have traffic lights on, half a mile away from the entrance, and that would be the safest possible situation. And they could pick any entrance. But I think what I like to see is we challenge the applicant on this issue. And it's incumbent on them to come back to us and convince us that whatever they select is safe. And if we don't think it's safe enough, we tell them that. And I think we've given them a lot of information about what we think is safe. But I think it's up to them to come back to us with a proposal.
Well, David, I would disagree with you on the fact that any entrance can be safe or not safe because blind driveways or blind roads are inherently not safe. And
with traffic lights on both sides, it's perfectly safe. That's what I'm trying to say.
we're not going to put traffic lights in both.
For the construction period, Matt.
Yes.
Not for the life of the project, but just solely for the period that it takes to construct the project.
Could be an opportunity.
Exactly.
I mean, I had to stop on River Road for 6 months because they had 2 traffic lights.
Yep.
And they did a project on River Road, and, I think that's the extreme. I don't think that's what we're talking about. But there's 1,000 different steps between that traffic light and what's there today. We talked with Nature's Wilderness we talked with one of the projects about all the trucks had to come from one direction because it wasn't safe to come from the other direction or to exit the property a certain way. They could lay down gravel on the side, on the side of the road so the trucks could pull into that, flow down and pull in. I think we have thoroughly challenge the applicant to come back to us and convince you that this is safe. And I think that's a great place to be because, as you said, I think they're willing to work with us. So I'm interested to see what they come back with.
Wes?
I've worked with Tony, I'm on stage man, I think Francisco, I don't think it's the DOT. He's the fellow who pays driveway, not the state highway. He can come out and show us, there's the 2-page form and it's free. And I think the logging area is the ideal place because coming out Beacon Road and 18-wheel doesn't stand a chance pulling out. Where when you have 500 feet, not only has more clear sight, you get time to pull out, but it's some way somebody appears, they have time to stop without locking up their brakes. That's important. So it's an easy solution. Get Tony out there, okay it. It's free, the application permit's free, what we're done, it's spread the gravel and on everything.
David is one of the wisest people involved in second to Joe. Now that I look at Bob and Wes, I realize
That's an insult to the
in deep trouble. But I think that getting some sort of certified traffic engineer involved
concerns being the timeline, so I understand that you're sharing our request and we're asking you to pursue the safe index, right, construction area. Are we requiring that they satisfy us to that extent before we're willing to proceed with the next step of the public hearing, or would we expect them at the public hearing to present that information so they can continue on the track or timeline as they need it?
Yeah, I believe that we need to resolve this issue, and we don't have to have new site plans before it's resolved, but after it's resolved, I think we have new site plans, and then we can proceed with a site walk and a public hearing. I don't think it's gonna, we're not talking about months of delay here, but we had months of meetings on Long Road and on the West Baldwin Solar Farm. They both started in 2020, in November, December, and they continued until February or March. Now we're all benefiting from that because we have a kind of a set of conditions that we are comfortable with. But this is the second time we've been here. It's only 2 meetings. We're actually moving at lightning speed. I don't know if you feel that way versus other projects you do, but I don't think we need to rush any evaluations or analytics or decisions for the timeline at this point.
And we don't want to rush anything. We want to take the process as needed. And I think really what we want to understand here is clearly what the objective is, what the board would like us to see for the next step, and how we can most efficiently get there. Both, obviously we would like to be efficient and use our time as wisely as possible, but also your time as wisely as possible. And so the fewer times we come before you, that also benefits you as well.
There's no reason that if you have more data on the plan and the safety and the line of sight traffic evaluation, that sort of stuff, that you can't, meet again on the 24th. And if that is, you'll be very happy to know that I will be out of town, and Joe will be running soon. So it's entirely possible that the safety issue, which is the primary issue for Baldwin, is resolved at that meeting, as well as anything on the visibility, and we'll move to set up a site walk and a public hearing at that meeting, or maybe one past that.
See, they'd rather have the sidewalk and the public hearing the night that you're not here. It'd work out a lot better for you.
Yeah.
Do you have clear direction on two issues?
One question I have, so let me summarize the direction. It is incumbent upon us to come back to the board with a safe entrance and convince the board that the entrance that we designed, both physically and operationally, we convince the board that that is safe. That is what I'm understanding after hearing the dialogue between Matt and Dave. One question I still have in mind, and going back to the ordinance and the line of sight requirements, is should we identify an alternative location that is safer but does not meet the requirements
I understand that you assure us that, the town board will approve that, but I'm not entirely sure if that's really what's allowed, so that's just one of the things I want to check. Can we truly go down the road of proposing something that is not allowed in the ordinance?
There could be a solution that would meet the ordinance. You might have to sacrifice some of your program.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand that.
Well, if you eliminate solar cells along the road, they're not over 50 feet, we'll probably give you a bigger buffer, give you the opportunity to put a site that's a piece of the beach. So, that's an issue that is still out there.
I don't think the position of our panel doesn't really have any effect on where that entrance is up and down.
What I'm saying is if you provide a large buffer along 113,
Okay.
would you move your line from panels back another 50 to 100 feet?
Okay.
You could have room for site distance, you could have room for a landscape buffer, you could have room for stage. And it probably could meet the requirements of the zoning subdivision.
Yeah, so if the buffer is your problem, then you may.
There is a solution,
It may not be the problem. You have to figure out if that's your problem.
Okay, understood.
It may not be the problem. So can I take a shot at answering this question? And I'm not sure Matt will agree. But my understanding of why we allowed the curb cut on
The new home.
the new home was that technically it existed before the request for subdivision was made. And so, and it was not done with the intent to violate the subdivision ordinance. In other words, the guy had no idea that he was putting in something that violated the subdivision ordinance. And so we were willing to make an exception begrudgingly in that situation. I don't see how creating a new curb cut here would meet those same standards unless theoretically that entrance onto the landing was the one that you chose, and it was considered an existing entrance to the property.
Been there a long time.
And so if that helps you with guidance, then you're really restricted to that existing landing entrance if you have to avoid the requirements of the subdivision ordinance.
Bob, do you remember a foundation being in there somewhere, near where that landing is?
I've never really been on the landing, that's why I don't even know if it's within their project here.
Right.
I don't either.
And this is all very hypothetical at this point.
I mean, just driving by, I haven't walked around over there. I think just driving by, there was a foundation, which could be a plus or a minus. A plus that somebody obviously got out on the Parker Trail, but a minus in that it's an archaeological site at that point. So, but in all other,
We've already consulted with them.
which tells me that that's probably not in the project area.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, you're the other guy who is curious about land, the way I am.
I haven't walked that piece of property at all.
Yeah,
Any other takeaways, next steps that we wanted them to do, Matt?
Well, I think the two issues that we've talked about are first, safety, what's the safest entrance? And second, if, we are gonna work with the Beacon Road entrance, then there's the issue of clear cutting to the,
Quite frankly, that's an easy part to consider.
Let me give you two scenarios. back to us and not have done an independent traffic engineer evaluation of line of sight and not considered other locations besides Beacon Road, and just came back to us with a gussy up plan to make Beacon Road seem a lot safer, I'm not going to be disappointed that he hesitated. And this is not hesitating. But if, you know, if you do like, you know, Wested and, you know, get some free advice and have a traffic engineer look at where is the safest place, and then weigh the two, and then come back to us with which you think is the safest one and what your plan is for it, and that happens to be Beacon Road. You know, it's you know, glory be. I think we're, do you have any other questions for us? We don't. All right.
Yeah, once they dig into my homework assignment. But, yeah, I think,
What other things are on your, you know, decision tree for, you know, getting this moving? Like, you know, you still have to do the evaluation for world begonias and things like that.
yeah, we're planning to submit the site law application and have sort of the small running survey come to follow up to that. So we don't need that to have a complete application.
Well, from what I recall, particularly with the long road, is that, you know, we had a book that talked about, you know, what's the impact on wildlife, you know, what about,
Yeah.
you know, the world begonias, and, you know, all those things. And some of that information was used actually to answer questions that people had at the public hearing. So there may be some things that we need to get done in that regard, so we're really ready for a public hearing.
So we completed all of the natural resource surveys aside from the small world begonia survey. The small world begonia survey is a timing thing, it's flowers. I think June 8th is actually the beginning of the survey window, which was this week. So we'll be getting out there in the next couple weeks. Given the timeline of what we're doing now, it will probably end up in the DEP application because it will be ready, we'll have completed the survey. That site law application, a copy of it, as you know, comes to the town, and all of that information will be in there. But we nearly have that application complete. With these changes, we're making sure that we accommodate all these things before submitting that application to the state. We don't have to pull back or redo or change things.
How did your teleconference and Zoom call go on Monday, June 1st?
Were you there?
No, I wasn't.
It was
Well,
Monday night, June 1st. Tell us something.
or was it Monday night?
No, our public information meeting.
Oh,
It's a
no.
Tuesday night.
It was not Ross. It come out for an hour, but no, it came.
It was not attended. It was advertised and not attended.
Tuesday, June 3rd.
Tuesday is the selectmen's meeting, so the three people that are not selectmen who are interested in town affairs at the selectmen's meeting.
So,
Was it 3 or 2?
Paul was at the selectmen's meeting, so
Yeah,
Kelly and I were at the public information meeting, which was very poorly attended.
Not unusual.
But well advertised,
yes.
and the shoppers guys did a great, they did a really good job.
All right, folks.
Okay, thank you for all your feedback and discussion this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are you going to be happy with decisions made with you not being on?
our, the people involved are very clear. I trust these folks to do what's right, and I trust you guys to, evaluate it and, these folks and make decisions, because, like I said, you know, from a personal standpoint, I'll buy fewer tires.
There you go.
If they improve Deacon Road.
Okay, great.
Thank you. You know, we're teams, so I think we had a robust discussion, and, appreciate everybody's input. Shall we, move on? The next, item on the agenda is reviewing the subdivision ordinance, which, Chris Burnell is off. Wes, cleared away. No, he just, Wes made it clear to him what he had to do, and, you know, when he learned he had to, you know, pay $150 and come and get his lot and map number and put his title in and fill out the whole CUP and then have a public hearing and everything like that in order to take 10 or 12 truckloads of dirt out of his property so he could use some himself somewhere else and sell the rest to Brent Anderson. He said, this is more trouble than it's worth. I'll stop at less than 10. So that was the deal there. But, yeah. So we need to evaluate the red line portion of the red typeface portion of the subdivision ordinance.
Okay. I'll just preface this whole thing. The reason for this change is that there was a state law passed a couple years ago that said towns need to get their subdivision ordinances in sync with the state statute. And there's something in there that says these definitions, you can use the definitions that the state has or more stringent ones. And in doing the research here, what I found is that MMA said you have the option to not put these definitions in your ordinance, just refer to the state statute. And that way you'll always be in sync. I personally don't like that, because when somebody gets these ordinance, I'd like to be able to read it without having to go to reference something on the internet or somewhere else. So the way I drafted it out was that our ordinances will have the definitions in it. And that means that at some time in the next couple of years, someone will check the state statute and make sure that it's the same thing. So, other than that, we can get right into it. The way I structured it is these definitions were looked at by a subcommittee of two, myself and Joe, and we went through the state statutes and our definitions to see which ones were the more stringent, and the ones that are in red, which essentially all of them, were the more stringent, and so those are the ones that we're recommending that be included. So I'm sorry there's no page numbers, because I had to format this from a PDF and then do it before. But if you get into Article 3 definitions, if you turn to the second page, you'll see developed area in black, and right below that is the state definition with a 1 behind it. And so to make this correct, you scratch out developed area and substitute it with red.
So you didn't do the strike out.
No, I didn't. But as I say, I want you to be able to see that they're both there.
Yeah, we just struck them out.
No, I didn't strike them out. And
So the developed area comes out, ours. map was developed, everything flat, that one's out.
Yep. And it would be substituted with this one that says one, and I've left in the numbering that comes out of the state statute, just for reference point, but you can leave that out to fit in here. The second one is dwelling unit, and so our dwelling unit definition would be taken out and replaced with the state's. Our ordinance doesn't have a definition of farmland. The state does, and so you would just insert that in there. Quite honestly, I don't know that we use the farmland definition within our ordinance at this time, but there it is. On the next page, freshwater wetlands. That would be substituted by the one in red. This is 2A. So you scratch out freshwater wetlands and substitute it for the red. On the next page, new structure or structures. That would be scratched out and replaced with 5 definition. There's a insert in here. You'll notice that it's out of order with the state definition, but it's a thing called principal structure. It's not something that we had in our ordinance, but it is in the state statute. So I inserted this definition of a principal structure. Next page, subdivision. And at the bottom of the page, subdivision definition would be scratched out and replaced with this thing says 4, subdivision. What it means. And then it continues on the top of the next page. And then in our ordinance, it says in determining whether a tract of parcel of land is divided into 3, you would scratch that out as well. That's just to show you what's in ours. And then A, include that. And then within A, there's a subparagraph 1, a 2, and from 2, there's a B and C. All of that needs to be included. And
Question, what about this thing?
the other A and B, that was already within our, let's see. Those, so let's look at A, both subdividing, this is the exceptions, clause, right? This is in the left. If we go back and look at A, under the A, it says, in determining whether a tract or parcel of land is divided into 3 more lots, the first dividing of the tract is considered to create 2 lots. Then you get into these unless things. And ours, both dividings are accomplished by a subdivider who's retaining one of the lots. And the division of the tract or parcel is otherwise exempt from this definition.
So they respect.
Those 2 stand for sure. And then you follow that with this look. D1 is that a division accomplished by device does not create a lot. That's an exemption. Exception. A division accomplished by condemnation. That's an exception. Those are not covered anywhere above. A division accomplished by a person, so on and so forth. So these all would be left in. Not covered anywhere else. Well, let's look at the previous page. B, the division of the tract or parcel is otherwise exempt under this definition. Accomplished by device, condemnation, for. So what the D1, D2, D3, D4, D5 does is essentially it just takes that paragraph B and spreads it out into separate little paragraphs.
Yeah, I think both A and B would go out.
Yeah.
That A and B is still underneath C1, the land. They got it.
Yeah.
The land, they got it.
Yeah.
A and B drop out and they're replaced by all these long paragraphs. So then you get down to the bottom of that mostly red page, and it says, determining the number of dwelling units in the structure, that's going to be struck out and replaced by something below it. And, H2 is an addition, but wasn't, continues on the next page. We get into subdivision, major, minor. There was no definition regarding that in the state statute. Tractor parcel land, that would be replaced by number 6. That's the infamous road before September 22nd, 71. Usable land state stays, and then there's a new one from the state that talks about outstanding river segments. And interestingly enough, if you look up that river segment, that borders on Baldwin, so you've got to stay in there. That's the meat of it. Then there are a few other changes that I just ran across. One is in Article 6, a few pages over, under minor subdivision.
Under 6.2?
Yeah, 6.2. There should have been something before that. But, so, in a minor subdivision, in the original that I downloaded from the website, after 25, there was a 300 kind of penciled in blue.
Shade struck of it.
And then the sharks came out. So, my recommendation is that that's what it's supposed to be. You scratch it up to 25 and put 300.
So I have I remember this came up a couple of years ago, because people didn't like my handwriting. And, so I think I was the moderator at this town meeting. Which kind of scares me how long I've been moderator. You don't feel old until you start talking these numbers. But in 2009, there was a proposed change to the subdivision ordinance that was approved by the town, Article 67, which was this change. And I have the thing, but I wanted to give it to you. The reason I printed it off was, first off, it was my handwriting, so I felt some sort of ownership. Because I remember we had somebody come to us, and the one that was online was not right. So I wrote in the right numbers, and we put that one up. I remember this. This was like 2011. So that's why it's handwritten. So I wanted to give this to you so you had the backup to what that number was. And there's actually,
David,
what?
I don't need it.
No, I want to give it to you, because I don't even want it enough. I know. Part of the historical record is to make sure a bunch of people have it. So when one person forgets history, the others remember.
I want to remind you that this is your ordinance that you're writing now. I'm no longer a member of the board. I'm just here. So it's good that you have that.
I know you're going to go home and read it and appreciate it. So
that's the only comment was I think that it ought to be.
So we should fix it. Yeah. No, I just wanted everybody to be comfortable that they didn't take my handwriting as the gospel, but we do need to change that. And since we have addressed that in subdivisions, it's been viewed as pretty punitive. So, you know, if we got to think about whether that makes sense going forward. But as for your project, it should be changed.
Okay. And so I put in that the other number of $100 was penciled in at $10,000. So if you want to keep that number or recommend something else, it's up to you. So I mean, that's something we folks can discuss.
Yeah, we discussed that.
Yeah. A few more pages in, we see, I think, there's similar numbers in Article 7 that were penciled in. But I got a little more confusing there, David.
It's right there, I don't even remember.
So, I haven't read the $15,000 number that's penciled in there, and then the recharge to max of $15,000. I think those are all issues that were in there, but, we can review it. Next one. Just the way, I think I commented, oh, here we go, Article 8. Under procedures, there's a fee in there of $25, maybe it's a lot. And,
That's great work, by the way, Bob. Good.
When I went through it, I was amazed to find so much about the shoreline zoning ordinance in here. And of course, it was all completely changed. It provides updated references for the current shoreline zoning ordinance. They get about a little over halfway through this pack and then get to paragraph 11-10, impact on water quality of shoreline. And I inserted there, cutting or removal of vegetation, water bodies. What I put in is comply with section 15.0, that should be, or maybe I'll check that. So the shoreline zoning ordinance, cutting or removal of vegetation. There was, you can check the existing stuff there, but that was, there's more there. I had to learn a lot of formatting, hidden keystrokes doing this.
Looks like table 12.2-2, you added the, reference numbers 12.2-2, minimum access station.
Yeah, there was a basic property line, there was some, missing reference numbers.
Yep.
And I put those in, to make that chart complete. Then the next one is table 12.2-3.
Yep.
Street design guidelines. And the word degree was missing, so I just put those in there. Make it more technically complete. Then, ways in further, I'll talk about the road pavements. This is just before paragraph 12.3.1. Wildlife habitat. I added degrees Fahrenheit. I think it said 35 F, so I just put degrees in there. And then two more pages over, there shall be no kind of vegetation on the strip of land exceeding 75 feet. And I've got a note in here, should be 100 feet to agree with shoreline zoning ordinance. So let's place there where there's need to decide, make sure you understand that that's correct. So I think it should be 100 feet. And on the next page, again, shoreline zoning, section 15.0, clearing or removal of vegetation. I believe I inserted those too, but you can check the original to make sure. But again, that was to verify. Next page, impact on water quality in the shoreline, again, it's reference to shoreline zoning ordinance. And just below there, you might not see there's a 75 feet. Insert there. This always makes me nervous when you have an ordinance that essentially replicates another one, because it's so hard to keep them in sync. So on the next page is four paragraphs there about clearing of land, cutting of trees. I believe it belongs in there. The next page, I inserted degrees after 135 midway through the page. Two more pages, I inserted 100 feet and then going to wetland. I think that I've hit the most of it. Like I said, it would be perfect. You know, what?
So, Bob, in Article 7, Item D, application requirements, number 24 on page 21, there's no update to the drip generation manual 1991 edition? Is there any newer edition in state regs that we should be coordinating with?
Article 7.
What number?
24 on page 21.
Well, I don't have page numbers, so
It's right before 8.1, so it's the page before 8.1.
I don't have a page number, unit,
So go until you get to Article 8, and then go back one page.
Yep.
Just on the vehicular track.
I don't know, but if you want to check it out, that would be a good one to do.
So it's currently the 10th edition to the manual, which was published in 2020. No, it was updated in 2020. So the most recent version is the supplemented version of the 10th edition of the trip generation manual. Which is about 30 years more up to date.
Right. Let's
So-
keep that in there.
You might want to change that to say the most recent edition.
I can use that language. As I went through, there's a lot of old references, so, old reports and stuff. I think we put the latest or latest edition.
Yeah.
Yes.
That works.
Great.
So Bob, are you like turning this back over to us and saying,
Yeah.
yeah.
Robin, Joe, thank you for doing that.
I did 0.3%. I checked out how exactly how much.
The Microsoft Word, do the formatting.
Help me out with the next steps. Would it be appropriate for us as a board to, vote on whether we accept these changes, and then, it would be to vote on, submit something to the selectmen to have these voted on at because to make these changes, we have to have it voted on at a special meeting. Or
Yeah, we have to have a public hearing, too.
have to have a public hearing.
I would suggest, because it sounds like folks have a couple other changes they may want to make, like, let's have this on the agenda for one more meeting. And whoever has proposed changes, you know, if you want to do most recent, we can kind of, you know, whoever wants to bring those forward, and then get a final version, and then ask the selectmen if, you know, if they want to do this in a special town meeting, or if they want to wait till next March. If they want to do it in a special town meeting, sounds like there's one coming up.
Maybe.
And so we'd have to have a public hearing 10 days or so before that.
I can tell you the, there's two or three things. Oh, Marana, Monterey,
Fernandez.
Yeah. The guy who owns Whistle Stop wants to get a, state agency liquor store license. That requires a referendum vote, which I think the referendum election requires also a public hearing beforehand, doesn't it?
Don't know. Yeah.
I think so. And I think you have to announce it, something like, I don't know, I think 30 days in advance, something. I mean, there's a lot of restrictions on those type of things. And you want to have a public hearing anyway. You want to be able to issue a license to sell spirits, I guess is what they call it.
You'd probably need a conditional use permit change too.
Well, that's what he would need, but
Yeah.
before the town to license it. So that's coming up, and of course, we'd like that as soon as possible. There's this talk, we've been looking at, maybe adjusting, some of the finances of the town, so we don't get a big spike in taxes. We voted 2 years ago to go to double taxing. And, the selectmen can do whatever they want on that, I guess, what the statute says, but they recommend that you get a sense of what the town thinks about the proposal. Because it's not easy. There's a lot of work that goes into it. You have to, in fact, assessing, auditing, town meeting date, probably, so, you know, a whole lot of things. So, I don't know. It might be a busy special town meeting, but, there's a lot of things, and then you've got this.
Yeah, but none of those things, wow. As soon as I say the word, it's going to be controversial. So,
Is it important?
well, they seem like they're all pretty straightforward, you know, like people are going to make their minds up before they walk in the door.
They might.
But as soon as I
problem
say
is-
that,
The problem is we're getting the selectmen prepared. So,
well, anyway, that's what I think, like, I think at least have one more meeting on this. Because I just know there's two places where there is a reference to like a 1994 study, so.
There's some other things we need to discuss. When was the latest time this stated, March 10th, 2000? That's the latest version of this?
That's the last time that there was a major, there was a couple of small changes, but that's the last time that there was any major changes.
I went through the whole thing, there's some contradictions. Things to really discuss.
That's why you're on the board, my friend.
So it might take a while, 3 days and stuff.
Well, on that, I think just put it on the agenda and start it off and.
Yep. It'll be be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Perfect.
Okay. Wes, next, can we move on to the next, item?
Yeah, for me.
Okay. Wes, want to give us, an update on where things are at with,
I've got a few things going on, yeah.
yeah,
I mentioned, especially me, and I don't want to get into it, we had a little asbestos demo. I just have to go on Harris Road, which is about 4 visits, and one to DEP, and DEP answer, that's all set. Got the construction application for Long Road back from Anastasia, out in Station, Idaho. So, we should be expecting a check about $250 shy of $30,000. And, tree growth, I informed her, she said she'll take care of it.
What's this for, I'm sorry?
For Long Road Solar.
Oh,
There was a little mix up in the acreage, but we straightened out, we decided all the acreage that the solar industry occupies is being cleared of trees, so that acreage that's going to be coming more than 59 from 65%.
almost 30,000 to take it out of tree growth?
I had an interesting phone call yesterday.
65 years.
And after he said about 2 cents, I said, slow down. I can't understand you because of your accent.
He was, 29,000.
Probably in India or something, but he's facing his company, he's calling from Arizona. His company is, where is it? It's Structurology. Asking about information. They're going to, seems, right at the beginning, to, install a solar farm on River Road. Know anything about it?
No, I don't. They might be the contractors.
You're right, it might be. Okay, you're right.
Why would they call you?
I had a whole list of different ones, in Colorado, Idaho.
Yeah,
And I said, isn't there anyone around here in Maine?
I met 3 new guys today.
You're right, okay. Okay. So they just come for the solar farm. Okay. So that was what happened. So that said, and we're talking about possibly special meeting or an exchange. I think with these 5 solar farms, and maybe not 6 ones, we ought to get something in our ordinance about solar.
Yes.
land use ordinance,
Pardon?
in the land use ordinance.
Somebody has to take it on as a project and propose it.
I spent online looking at a bunch of model ordinances already that some of the other towns and things are using. So maybe we can take a look and see if we can incorporate that, some of that language. Good. I'll get that. Okay.
Whenever you're, ready, we'll put it on the agenda and you can, structure, beautiful. And Wes, I think, has one from Cornish that isn't
Earlier, or last year, somewhere around, I don't know, September, Cornish had written up a solar ordinance, and I handed it to David as possible guidance. Because some of their ordinance, they, took from Old Orchard Beach ordinance. But, I almost think what we really need is definitions, and we need in Article 6 of land use for various districts in Article B and C, what's submitted by the CEO, submitted by, planning board, to conditional use of solar. And basically, in establishing solar, we're dealing with all the land uses very similar to subdivisions. Roads, and county land, take a little committee work and we'll examine, do we really need a full-fledged solar ordinance, or can we add items to the land use that deals with ecology of the land, erosion, and you can't leave the land to develop. So,
The chatter in Augusta is that they're gonna come out with they're gonna preempt the towns. They're going to say what can and can't be done, and in order to address that electrical issue that you just brought up, they're going to, come out with state inspectors replacing, most of the local building inspector work. Because, I mean, you don't know what the electrical is, and the electrical is the important part for us to know is done safely. So, anyway, that's the chatter I hear on it.
the Templar turned on the power here down in Mayetta, they have a big handle on a utility pole that's a blocking it. And they thought, now that they were in, the could break it, pull it down, close it, stuff like that. And basically, cut the lock and they could. And just hang a little sign on the handle saying 600 volts and the little touch it. And then you said, well, there's a lot more than 600 volts up there.
There's one of those handles at Senator Black Road on the left, the first or second pole in. And that's the one that glows and we all lose power. And it's very sensitive, so really sensitive. But yeah, it is.
It's very good.
Anything else, Wes?
No, that's pretty well. You got a couple of items there, so you're gonna mention AT&T.
Anything on, no, those are really the updates on anything, what's happening with Nature's Wilderness? Are they moving forward, selling their land or what?
I have a feeling that the new buyers are just gonna buy that land there instead of size and maybe wait 5 years. And then make a deal with the person who wants it, and, wait 5 years, it won't be a subdivision.
Can't do it.
Pardon?
Can't do it. It's part of the CUP. They can wait 10 years. They still have to come back.
Okay, so they're gonna change the CUP.
Yeah. And that map that you had, somebody had that road thing that said the inventory of roads. And I noticed that Deacon Road stopped at Town Farm Road, didn't continue on. So,
It did though at one time.
well, that's the question is, at what point, if it's not in existence by the town, then I think it has to be recognized by the deed to be a way. I mean,
I don't know, I mean, it's for you folks to decide.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
do ordinance and you decide.
The road, I guess, has disappeared through the aggressiveness of nature,
Yeah,
but the boundary line of the properties basically followed what the road was.
but that's the interesting part, yeah.
No, don't follow the road, no,
Well, not that part, not that, like, once it goes beyond Town Farm Road, I don't think there's a property line that borders it.
Okay.
no,
Okay.
no, it's recent, even on this end,
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
And I think if somebody wants to disagree, they can take it to court and sort it out.
Yeah, exactly.
My deed doesn't mention it, and it goes through my property.
Yeah.
And my deed's been twice-checked by these lawyer types, and they never found anything about the Deacon's Road in it. So it never was an easement.
Okay, yeah, okay. And, through David last night about the driveway on 107, I can comment on that. It was totally my error, my friend was on vacation when I said, okay, Lenny, you can do that. I'm off, let's get it fixed. We will come for a CUP. He was able to shift gears, he had the node lot. He's working on that, so he stopped everything that he was doing there. It diverts his effort and his cash flow a bit, but he's surviving it, doing well. And so we'll go for a CUP, get a subdivision
But he still has to come off Grant Road, like,
We'll work on that through the CUP.
but no, I mean, like, we can't grant that access. I mean, that's the same issue as we've been talking about with these
Yeah,
guys.
yeah.
The subdivision ordinance says no driveway on
Yeah,
107, so
yeah.
just make sure he knows that he's got to figure out a way to access it from Grant Road.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got my blood boiling when I saw that. I saw him dig that driveway and I was like,
First year, I got
What's going on across the street, just down towards East Baldwin from that property? You look across the street and there's these poles going out, they're like 10 feet tall or something.
Merritt Lane. Merritt? Bennett Lane.
Have no idea.
Yeah, I just wonder,
You look at his driveway, there's full fence posts into his driveway.
maybe those are fence posts, yeah.
When he came here, 3-4 years ago, he wanted to buy land and establish a racetrack for dirt bikes or something like that.
Right.
He has a noise problem and all that. So he has kids and he does it, so I think it's gonna be his recreation.
I've been driving along 107, it's like dusk, driving along 107, and I look over, and there's this junker white car in the woods doing the track. It's kind of a cool track right now. And I'm doing 50, and I look over, and he's doing 50 on the dirt road, and I just see him like bouncing, and I'm going, I start tracking, I'm like, really?
That's nice, when I was a kid.
Oh, I'm sure.
Old junker, we did on the steel road, this is fun.
I'm sure it's fun.
Dan Maravino had a good talk with him about a week ago and started working on his CUP application. He's got to get, he's going to be coming with a sales and purchase agreement. He hasn't solidified the land deal. That's going to build up because of surveying, which is so he may come for an initial meeting and maybe a month and a half before he has everything together and really roll on.
Where is this?
On the other side, north side of Frank Road.
Oh, okay.
That hook of land there, which is between Grant and Bryant Road, which we sometimes call Lair, is being divided into two sections. His is about 11 acres, the other's gonna be 26 acres.
Okay.
I don't know. It's under another sales contract, and I don't know if they're just gonna put one house in there or what. It's Cooper Till's going on it. I heard through Stan that Hertel is probably the largest landowner in Maine.
Yeah, it's a lot of land.
Mine showing up on the coast.
Yeah.
All over. Thank you, Wes. Okay.
Before we break, I'd like to have a quick discussion, on, LD 1312, an act to remove barriers to accessory dwelling units and allow accessory dwelling units where single-family houses are allowed. We've sent around, a bunch of, emails on this. We got notified, about it from the MMA, and, basically, as Wes said, if it's approved, it could end up in creating, or making it more difficult for the town to prevent the development of shanty towns of trailers on single-family home properties. And Tracy, you was dug into it a little bit today. You want to?
I think just sort of a general comment at a very high level review of a couple of statutes and just proposed languages. Getting feedback from sort of the positions and the players, kind of what's going on and who's driving it and who's advocating on all sides and really understanding, you know, part of this has to do with the housing crisis, which is real. So there's sort of looking at really a solid idea of kind of what's trying to be achieved and where, for example, the town of York has an ADU provision right now that says any ADU has to be occupied by a blood relative and they have to be older than age 62 and set up so like in-law suites. So I think what we're looking at is the state saying, you can't decide you can only have ADUs for 62 and older, and you can't decide that you can only have, and there's been for a long time a push for of right of the landowner to have the ability to develop. But I don't think it necessarily automatically equates to the worst case scenario of what that would look like. And through the design standards, there will be the ability to say it must be secured to a natural foundation. It must be, you know, there's, so if you think in mind kind of what we're looking to achieve and allowing for the creation of them, but how they should be created in the same fire safety, health concerns that we look at for other things, that it would just require us to, and I mean, you could in theory say no mobile homes that aren't secured to a foundation. So I don't know that we want to decide to judge the type of unit. That's not really our position. Our position is to say, what are the safety concerns, what are the traffic concerns, what are the other things that we typically look at. So as a first step, I think it would be helpful for us to know what's going on and who's heavily involved in kind of getting a lay of the land for the advocating that's going on, and how MMA has been contacted by other towns, kind of what's going on out there. And I suggest we do that first, because it should then inform what we decide to do next. And there's a lot of steps before there's an enacted piece of legislation. So I think to the extent that we can involve ourselves in an opportunity to craft language or propose language or request tweaks or go to the public hearings that are occurring on legislation, we should inform ourselves and take advantage of those pieces. And then just as an aside, even if it was approved today as it's written, I don't read it as there's nothing we can do. I read it as we need to be thoughtful and deliberate and make sure that we're not putting our personal judgment, but we're looking at the same goals and balance of interest between landowners and what the town needs to accomplish and what people's concerns are, and that we approach this like we would in any other issue.
Is anybody, on the select board or selectman's office, involved in this or providing any feedback or following it or anything?
Well, I was online and I pulled up from the legislative thing, the actual wording of it, and I thought it was kind of dire, actually. There are a lot of restrictions on what the town can't do.
I agree that those.
You can't limit it, what do they call it, like a bed and breakfast, Airbnb type thing. You can't limit that. You can't limit it to who lives in the housing unit. You can't restrict the setbacks and whatnot. There's some words I think that talk about it's okay, so it will be permitted as long as it doesn't make the lot less conforming. Right? You can't limit this who lives in it. You know, you can't say this could be just a relative. It could be anybody. It could be a short-term renter or a long-term renter. When I start to think about that, I do think that if you have a subdivision that we've just developed with 2 acre lots minimum, those are extensively. Oh, I don't think there's even the ability to limit the issue about the septic system. Right. And so, you know, you can get into a situation where the subdivision for 12 houses suddenly becomes only 4. And there's a lot of planning and work that goes into these land use ordinances. And this kind of just throws a lot of it out. In fact, it throws out a lot of the philosophy, I think, of the state limited growth law. Whether you agree with those or not, I mean, there's a lot of people that say that the state has over-restricted land use. When you say 2-acre lot, that's too restricted. You don't really need that. You don't need that for a septic system, you know. But that has been the rule, I think, since the 70s when the state started restricting in fear of being overrun from Massachusetts, I guess. But this law, I think, could really open things up to a lot of development that you don't necessarily want, and the town would have few options as to how to govern that. And I don't know, you know, could you call that a building permit, right? Would that count as one of the 12? I don't know. Somebody wants to put it.
Yeah, I've seen some other announcements come through from MMA, not follow this or follow that, but this one just made me sit up and it could change the complexion and nature of Baldwin. Joe?
How about calling Bill Leonard and just talking to him about the concerns you have and asking him for his interpretation of the bill and just let him know that you talked about it in planning board meeting and so forth. You're the one that's concerned, and Bill Diamond, who's our rep? Seabrook.
Richard Seabrook.
Seabrook probably thinks it's a good bill.
Probably.
Yeah.
But, give me your opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, if he doesn't get any of this feedback, then
I'll call Richard.
he can do what he wants to.
Seabrook.
And I think it's important to have for clarity, because the strict prohibitions are worded in a way that are alarming, like the town cannot do X, Y, Z, and we're reading that sort of literally at face value. The interplay, though, between your construction and design standards in the local ordinances play into, like, it can't be the case that they're saying that there is no longer any septic requirement of any kind ever on anybody's land. It reads that way, but that's not going to be the case.
I'll give you an example of you build a house, and you build a house with a septic system that might be just meets the requirements based on the number of bedrooms and people. Someone comes along and puts an auxiliary housing unit on the property. Do they have to upgrade the septic? They should.
And that's what
And then you got a well down there, and what's it sucking up?
Yeah, well, look at the good stuff. But, I think the other thing is that the law was put forward from the committee, as it's currently stated, with no recommended changes or anything to it. So I think that's a concern. Now, it might get just tossed out, you know.
And I think to some degree, looking at the hearing, so on the legislature, where you can go in and see what the history of the bill is,
Yeah.
committee, came out of committee, you can also read, there's testimony from 5 parties that gave testimony at this hearing when it was in committee. You can read that testimony and get a feel for like who was saying what about it. I think we're at a stage where it would be helpful to get insight into why the proponent of this bill or the sponsors do not feel that it would create the very types of issues we're raising. Right? There's a lot of the perception and intent behind it is probably more than a few words on the page. So it's really about, you know, the courts will ultimately decide what those words mean when somebody challenges something we do as the town, et cetera. So there's more to it than the text itself.
Well, how about if we take a multi-pronged approach to it, Joe calls Seabrook, I'll call Diamond, and we've had a plan for how you could follow through what other communities are doing and things like that, and, yeah, we can all report back, and, the idea is not to be blindsided by this, so that all of a sudden, Wes finds that he has his hands tied in, trying to
That much more money with a truck than,
Especially if it's on wheels.
yeah, you could deliver.
Okay.
Can I interject one
Yep.
slight small concern that would you make sure that the selectmen make sure that our CEO is vigilant about, the CUP for Nature's Wilderness? The signage is enough. When Marion and I were coming down today, the four huge lost truck and trailer were meandering down our road because they didn't know where Nature's Wilderness was. I'm also concerned about signage in the woods that's supposed to be up. I'm not sure if that's there. It seems like you guys worked so damn hard to make something that seems equitable to everyone. And now it's like the CUP doesn't matter at all. And yeah, I feel like I have been to enough meetings so that you're as tired of listening to me as Gary is. But I also live there, and I also really want to make sure that what you guys have put into place that we as a town agreed on is actually really happening. And when Gary tells Wes it is, that's not enough. Wes really needs to know.
Well, I can imagine if I put myself in Gary's shoes, if he's looking at selling this and somebody who's treating it like an investment, that he would slow down the pace on putting up signage and things like that. But I'll put Nature's Wilderness on the agenda for a specific discussion at the next meeting, and Wes can let us know about what aspects of the CUP are in process and what needs attention, and I'll work with him on that too.
I really appreciate that.
To see how I can help.
And you did this.
And you know, the other piece to it is this trailer is one of the big ones. He's on Senator Black Road. How does he turn around? Where does he turn around? In Marion's driveway? Hall Road? Once you go past the campground, which isn't very well marked, you've got somebody driving something with no.
It's pretty easy. You just go all the way down to West Walnut Village, go back down.
That's right, you can go all the way back to and that means he enters Route 113 twice where everybody's going 65 miles an hour with a vehicle that doesn't get out of the way very quickly. Talking about safety, but that's just my.
Didn't you, put together some sort of a checklist at some point?
Yes, you did, I couldn't
Could you
find it.
revise that, or could you bring that up, circulate it again? Sure. That would be great.
Thank you. It's late, let's go home.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Very much, great discussion. Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you.